Good morning. Welcome to another Beside You Friday morning live. I must confess that I have pre-recorded this live once again, but if you have any questions or comments, then please do put them in the comments and I'll be checking up on those and answering them as quickly as I can. There'll also be some links in the comments to useful websites. My name is Tamsin. I am a midwife. I work at Medway Hospital on the postnatal ward, and I'm also part of the infant feeding team, Team Romina. And I am going to talk to you today about what happens after the first 24 hours with your baby. If you've seen my previous two lives that I've done, the first one was about the physical and emotional changes during pregnancy, how your body prepares to feed your baby. And then I spoke in the next one about the first 24 hours with your baby and what to expect. And like I said, today I'm going to talk about what happens after those first 24 hours. So, perhaps you've gone home with your beautiful, wonderful, amazing baby. And maybe that first 24 hours, your baby was one of those babies that slept quite a lot. You stared at the baby. I covered that last time. You will have stared at your baby for those 24 hours. You probably won't have slept very much, but your baby possibly did sleep quite a lot. There are some babies that do feed a lot on that first 24 hours. They haven't read the books, remember, so they're going to do their thing. But perhaps your baby has been one of those more sleepy babies. You've gone home and maybe you're thinking, this is all right, isn't it? Don't know what all the fuss is about. My baby is a good baby. Fabulous. Not sure what that means, a good baby, but I think it means a baby that sleeps. Now, as a midwife, I see a good baby as a baby that wakes regularly to feed, feeds well, is settled for a time after their feed, and has periods where they're more awake and more alert. That's a good baby. And that they're doing that all day and all night. So, you're at home with your baby, and perhaps you're feeling the exhaustion's kind of starting to set in. That second 24 hours can be the time that just you feel overwhelmingly tired, like you're trying to wade through custard, like everything you're trying to do is just so hard. Putting a thought together, let alone making a decision, is almost impossible. And today is the day that your baby has decided to become more alert, more aware, and more needy. Your baby now intensely needs you. Your baby needs to be held and needs to be fed. We would expect a baby in this second 24 hours to feed at least 8 times, and some babies will feed many, many more times than that. And that can be really very, very tough when you're already feeling really exhausted. But your baby isn't doing that because there's something wrong. They're not doing that because you haven't got milk. They're not doing that to make your life difficult. They're doing that because they are biologically programmed to behave in that way. They've had that first 24 hours where they had the reserves from being inside your tummy. They've had that time to allow you both to recover. And now they are kind of realising that there is a world around them, that there are needs that they have. They need to be fed. They need to be warm. They need to be loved. And your baby is born with some very strong instincts. An instinct to feed, and all they need to be able to meet that need is to be on mum. They can move around, they can latch on, they can feed. The other really strong instinct that they have is to survive the saber-toothed tiger who is roaming outside the cave. They know with all of their being that if they are put down, they will be eaten by the saber-toothed tiger. So when you put your baby down, they will usually make a bit of a fuss, perhaps start crying as soon as they even are in this kind of position. They might become more alert and start crying. And they're saying, "Mommy, what are you doing? This a saber-toothed tiger roaming outside the cave. Do you not know about the tiger? You must know about the tiger. You're a fully grown adult. You need to save me from the tiger. Pick me up, pick me up, pick me up. Oh, it's okay. I'm okay. The saber-toothed tiger can't get me because my grown-up has got me and everything is okay. We're good. We're safe. Lovely. And oh, I've had access to food now. I think maybe I'll have a little feed. That'll make me feel much better because you know that was quite frightening. And so they'll feed. There's another reason that they're feeding very often, and again it comes down to biology. There are distinct types of mammals. If we look around the animal kingdom, we can see other mammals. There's lots of other mammals out there, but they behave in slightly different ways, and we can kind of group them together. So the first group of mammals we would call cash mammals, and these are mammals that are able to leave their babies for a long period of time and go away and forage for food and do what they need to do. This will be animals like a deer, and they'll leave the fawn for hours and hours and hours, and the fawn during that time won't move, won't make a sound, won't wee or poo or do anything. They'll just stay very, very still, hidden in the undergrowth with really good camouflage, and the mum will come back and feed them. The milk that the mum produces is really high in protein and has a very different makeup to our human milk, but is just what that baby needs. That baby can also keep themselves warm on their own. They don't need others around them to keep them warm. They don't need warmth from their mother. So they're pretty robust as soon as they're born. They can do this. They can walk around and run, but really what they do is stay still and silent. Mum will return to them, feed them. That's when they'll move around, they'll make noise, they'll wee, they'll poo, they'll do all the things that they need to do. And then mum will go away again and the baby will be still again. Our babies are not like that. Then we can look at the next kind of group of mammals, and we call them follow mammals. So think of any kind of herd mammal, so sheep, goats, elephants, all of those kind of mammals where the baby is born, again, pretty robust. They're born and they can stand and run and follow the herd straight away, and they follow after mum. And if you watch these kind of animals, what you'll see is the mum tends to direct when the baby's going to feed. So the baby might go to mum and be like, can I have a feed now? And mum will be like, no, not now. And you'll see maybe the sheep come push that baby away, but that's okay because the baby can handle that. There's still quite a high amount of protein in the milk. They can go for longer periods of time between feeds and do very, very well. Again, there's only one, sometimes two babies that are born to one mother, and we can see that they're very different to us. You've got the nesting mammals. So those are mammals like cats and dogs, and they have a litter. So a litter of kittens, a litter of puppies. There's lots of them. And the reason that there's lots of them is they need each other to keep warm. So they're going to stay in their nest. Again, their mother's going to go off and find food and do what they need to do and then return to the nest. And they've kept each other warm whilst she's been away. And they shall come and she'll feed them. Marvellous. Again, higher levels of protein in the milk than we've got. Also lots of other things that are at different levels. So they do really well. And then our closest relatives, the carry mammals, the primates, so gorillas, chimpanzees, monkeys. Those babies are born and they're relatively needy. They need their mother for warmth, for a start. They can't keep themselves warm. And they will need to feed on demand. They will move around the mum so that they can access the milk. So perhaps mum's going through the trees, they'll be clinging on to mum's back, but then they can move themselves around to her front so that they can help themselves to feed whenever they want to and whenever they need to. These babies are similar to our babies, but they can cling on to mum. Then we have our babies. Our babies are born, they can't keep themselves warm, and they haven't got a litter around them to keep each other warm. They need to be close to us for our warmth. And the milk that we produce is very low in protein compared to the other milks. So baby doesn't stay full for such a long time. So baby needs to feed pretty much continuously throughout the day and throughout the night to meet their needs. it's not because they're being difficult. It's not because there's something wrong. It's because it's their biological programming to do that. But our culture doesn't really help us to do that at all. We've lost our tribe. We've lost that ability to just be with our babies and not worry about anything else because other people will do it for us. If you have that situation where you've got other people around you doing things or offering to do things, then say, yes, please, brilliant. Please bring me my dinner. Please, could you make me a sandwich while you're here if you're coming to visit? Please make me something to eat, make me something to drink. Anything that people can do to help, and people want to help. Let them help. We're not very good at that, but please let them help, because this is a really intense time for you and for baby, and there is a biological, scientific reason for that. So it's okay to go with it. Your instincts will probably tell you to hold your baby and respond to your baby, but perhaps you've got voices around you saying to you, oh no, you're spoiling your baby, you want to put them down, making wood for your own back, you are doing that. And that is simply not what the science tells us. So it can be really challenging dealing with those well-meaning people who have this advice for you. And something that I try to remember is that we do the best we can with the knowledge we have at the time. When we know better, we do better. Maya Angelou said that, very wise woman. And it's so true. We just do our best. So perhaps it's your parents or your grandparents that you're hearing that from, and they were doing their best with the information they had at the time. We've done so many studies since that time, and we know differently now. So we recommend something different. It doesn't mean that what they did was wrong, because in that time, with that knowledge, that was what was advised, and they were doing their best. But this is what we know now. So whilst it can be challenging to have people telling you those different things, there's some good resources to share with people. There's a UNICEF leaflet called Building a Happy Baby, which is beautifully written, very simple, and it just lays out why it's important that you respond to your baby for their brain development and to ensure that they are as healthy as they can be. So share that with those people around you. You can access it online. We'll put it in the comments for you. And also you'll probably be given a copy by your midwife. So these challenging days can become really, really tough. Around about day 3 to day 5 is where your milk changes. And the change is really the water content. The main ingredients remain the same as the wonderful colostrum that you've been making up to this point, but the water content goes up considerably, so the volume of milk becomes much greater. So your baby will be taking on board much more milk. And on that day, you will cry. You will cry most of the day. You will cry because you'll look at your baby. Your baby's so beautiful. It's just so beautiful. I made this baby. Look at this baby. You'll cry because you'll be standing in your kitchen staring at the wall, not really thinking about anything, but have tears running down your face because you're just crying. Partners, it's okay. She's not broken. This is a normal part of new motherhood. There's exhaustion going on and there's loads of hormonal changes going on, and it's a really normal thing to happen. In fact, if I visit a woman on that particular day and she's all sprightly and everything's fabulous, then that rings little alarm bells for me, because it's so normal for a mum to just be a bit of a sobbing mess on that day. All I can say is try and ride it out, go with it. I think if you're expecting it, it's a lot easier to deal with. First time round, if you didn't know it was coming, it can be like, whoa, what is going on? But it's okay. You will get through it. Partners, you are so key in supporting this feeding relationship. Tell her she's amazing. Tell her she's doing an amazing job. Ask her what she needs from you. Bring her lots of food, lots of drink. She'll be more thirsty than she's ever known before. Even that thirsty thing that you get when you're pregnant, nothing compares to the thirst that you feel when your milk comes in. So bring her lots of drinks. Basically, worship the amazing thing that she's doing. And you can do so many things to support that. You be the one that watches that feeding video of how to do it, so that when she's in that 3 o'clock in the morning brain fog, you can say, oh yes, do you remember in the video, perhaps moving maybe a little bit that way, that might help. You can be that person who's supporting her and lifting her up so that she can do this pretty tough thing in the early days. It feels like you're feeding your baby constantly, but baby will have gaps in between feeds. In the evenings often, and sometimes at different times of the day. Again, baby hasn't read the books. They don't know what they're supposed to do to the letter. But they all have similar kind of traits. Cluster feeding is a really normal part of those early days and weeks. Most babies will cluster feed in the evenings, and you'll find that the baby just demands to be fed constantly for a few hours often. Be prepared for that. Build yourself a little nest, have everything around you that you might possibly need, and know that that is what you will be doing for those hours. Have no expectation to do anything else. And that can make it a lot easier to manage. I cannot wave a magic wand and make it so that your baby doesn't do it. Your baby will very likely cluster feed. It's also really normal for your baby to feed more at night because you make more milk producing hormones at night and there's less predators at night. So it's a pretty safe time for your baby to be more alert and to feed more. Gradually your baby will learn that there isn't a saber-toothed tiger, that it's okay, that day is when we're more alert and night is when we're more asleep. It takes babies a different amount of time from one baby to another baby. Some babies get that quite quickly and some babies take a lot longer. I don't know what your baby will be, but you will find your own rhythm over those days and weeks that you almost sort of can fall into without even realising that you're doing it. Your baby is not designed to be on a rigid schedule. Your baby cannot tell the time. Your baby is going to need to be fed with different amounts of time between each feed, different amounts of time that feed might take. A lot of feeds, it's likely that your baby will want to feed on one side and then come off. Always offer the other side. Sometimes they'll take the other side as well, and sometimes they won't, but it's okay. But it's good to always offer it. Watch for your baby's early feeding cues. So I think I spoke about them before. It's the moving of head, doing the maybe waving their arms around, waving their legs around. Really watch for those early feeding cues because it is so much easier to get your baby to latch and for it to be a much calmer experience for both you and your baby when you've caught those early feeding cues. You won't get them every time. Sometimes your baby will not seem to show those cues, or perhaps you're doing something else and you've missed them. That's okay, but your baby might get quite agitated quite quickly. If that happens, bring your baby up to centre and try and calm them down. A crying baby just can't latch on well. They can't coordinate the sucking and the swallowing and the breathing that they need to do to latch and feed well. So try and calm them first and then try to feed them. Sometimes baby is difficult to calm on mum because they can smell the milk and they really want that milk. So sometimes perhaps if you've got somebody else there with you, pass baby to them to calm. And as soon as baby is calm, come back to mum. Remember that skin to skin can be used throughout your feeding journey and until your child says, no more. But keep doing skin to skin. It is an amazing tool in your parenting toolkit. It's calming. It is like a all-round deep pressure hug, which just helps to calm your baby. Mums can do that skin to skin as much as you like. It's going to help with your milk. It's going to help all the wonderful things that we've talked about before. But partners too, please do skin to skin with your baby. It's an amazing bonding thing to do, and it helps to calm baby down as well, just as it does on mum. So lots of skin to skin still, lots of cuddles, lots of interaction, and you will get there. So how do you know that your baby is feeding well? How do you know that your baby is getting any milk? Well, the first thing is you're going to look at your baby while they're feeding. Are they latched deeply? Is their chin really tucked into your breast with a gap between their nose and the breast? Have they got quite a wide jaw with their cheeks not pulling in at all? There's no sinking in of their cheeks. Is their jaw moving in a nice rhythmic motion? Once your milk comes in, we would expect to see 2 sucks per swallow. And from that point, you'll probably be able to hear that swallow. Before your milk comes in, you need to do a bit of detective work to see whether baby is swallowing. One of the videos that was shared, I think last week, about attaching your baby at the breast, has a really good little bit of the video that shows the drop in the jaw as they swallow. So have a look at that video and keep watching that little bit, because it's very subtle. But once you know what you're looking for, you can look for that swallow and make sure baby's swallowing. The time that the baby spends at the breast is really not as important as how much they swallow. If baby is latched on for an hour and they only swallowed once, well, that's not much of a feed, and they'll probably want another feed quite quickly after that. If baby was latched on for 10 minutes but they swallowed many, many times, then that's a much more effective feed. So that's what we're looking at. That's what's really, really key. The other thing that's going to tell you that your baby is getting enough milk is that your baby will finish the feed themselves. They'll then be content for a time after that feed. Another key thing is their nappies. What's in their nappy? What's going on for them? So on day 1 and 2, like we said last time, then 2 or more wees per day is great, and at least one of those black sticky poos. So I've got my knitted nappy here. So this is where we're at, the really black sticky tar-like poo. Then about day 3 to day 4, we're going to start changing through these colours. Then we're going to see some green poos happening, a bit like pesto, and it has seeds in it. And you think, well, I know I didn't give my baby any seeds. What is that? It's actually little fat globules from your milk. Just shows that everything's working exactly as it should. Do not panic. And then we're going to move through these colours until you get to about day 5-ish, and you're going to get this lovely yellow korma. I'm going to go with korma, perhaps like an English mustard, but in a large quantity, much more mustard than you'd ever put in your ham sandwich. So it's yellow, it's quite runny, that's very normal. And you're going to see from about day 5, you're going to have 5 or more wees in a day and at least 2 soft yellow poos. Now, we used to say it was normal for a breastfed baby to go a number of days without doing a poo. And certainly once your baby is bigger, that can be normal. But in these early days, no, we would want to see poos every day from your baby. And as long as your baby is content and they're doing the wees and the poos and you're comfortable when baby is feeding, that you don't have pain, and the pain will be caused by baby latching on with a more shallow latch and just sucking on the nipple. That's what causes that pain. So just make sure that that latch is really, really deep. Getting a deep latch really is the key to successful breastfeeding. When baby latches deeply, it stimulates the hormones in the right way. The milk is transferred from you into baby very effectively. And in the early days of breastfeeding, the very early days, your breast milk is controlled by your hormones. So it will happen whether baby is latched deeply and feeding perfectly or not. After those first few days, it then becomes controlled by how much milk is removed from the breast. If you're not removing the milk from the breast, no more milk will be made. It's a pretty good system so that you don't explode. And it's important that that happens. However, if your breasts are feeling full all the time, what will happen over time is that you make less and less milk. So it's important that baby is latched deeply and feeding well, and that your breasts are not feeling full all of the time. If you're finding your breasts are feeling a bit full, perhaps baby isn't feeding quite effectively enough. Sometimes it's necessary to express off some of that milk just so that you're comfortable. I would say on that day that your milk comes in, you are going to feel quite full for most women. And that can be okay for a short amount of time, but you don't want that to go on for days and days. So just make sure that your breasts are feeling comfortable. And it can then be a bit worrying that your breasts don't feel full anymore. It can feel like there surely isn't any milk there. But you are not a storage system. You are a milk making system and a milk supplying system, and it works very effectively to make milk as baby is feeding, as well as storing a little bit there between feeds. But as time goes on, you'll find that you feel much more comfortable. In those days where you are feeling a little bit full, it can become difficult for baby to latch on. With my knitted boob here, we've got a nice protruding nipple. Now, I must say that it's not nipple feeding, so the size and shape of your nipple does not determine how successful you will be at breastfeeding. It is breastfeeding. It's important that your baby gets a mouthful of breast, not a mouthful of nipple. So if I turn my breast around, this might look a little bit more like a breast on those full feeling days where the nipple ends up being a little bit more flat, or perhaps you've got flatter nipples anyway. That's okay, baby still can latch on. It can be helpful sometimes for baby just to tilt the nipple slightly up towards them. So in line with wherever their nose is, you can do a little bit of a tilt and latch baby on here. So it's important that your fingers are not too close to the nipple. If you're making a little like a little burger for your baby, sometimes that means that your fingers are in the way and baby can't latch on deeply if your finger is there. So it's important that you're either moving that finger further back or it's not there at all, and you're just doing that tilt from the top in line with their nose, and they can latch on. If you're finding though that you are really quite full here, it can be helpful to do something called reverse pressure softening, which is actually quite a simple technique. All you do is you're going to form like a... Now, the only description I have for this is like when you're putting your hands in like a tin of Pringles, you know what I mean, right? So you make this kind of shape with your hand to get it in the Pringle tin. And you're going to make that little shape. And you're going to put your fingers just around your nipple. And you're just going to do some gentle pressure around your nipple just to soften here. And what you'll find is probably some milk will come, just a little bit. And you're just going to push gently here, and you can move your fingers around to make sure that you're getting all of those that will maybe be a bit bumpy around here. You're going to put some pressure here, and that can help to soften the breast just enough to help baby to latch on more deeply. Dummies, there's a thing. So dummies have become a little bit controversial over the years. But really what we recommend is that you don't introduce a dummy to your baby in the early days of breastfeeding, because it can mean that you miss those really important early feeding cues. And it's also a very different way of sucking than what they're going to do at your breast, and it can make things a little bit more difficult. Obviously, it is personal choice whether you use a dummy, but we wouldn't recommend you introduce it in those early days. So, in summary, I think the key messages here are: watch your baby, be led by your baby. If they tell you, if they look like they might be hungry, then try to give them a feed. If they're hungry, they will feed. If they're not hungry, they won't feed, and that's okay. Be led by them. Your baby will tell you everything that you need to know. Trust that little inner voice that I know you've got inside you, but Google and books have kind of taken over that inner voice. It's there. Trust it. Again, if it feels like it's the right thing to do, then it probably is. So keep holding your baby, keep cuddling your baby, keep loving your baby, sniff your baby. You will definitely sniff your baby, it's a thing. And just be with your baby and feed them on demand. Remember, your baby has needs at this point. Your baby does not have wants. Your baby needs your touch, your closeness. Your baby needs to be fed very often. Your baby needs you, and you are enough. Just you, just the way that you are, just holding your baby, loving your baby, and feeding your baby is a wonderful thing, and it can be amazing. But those early days can certainly be challenging. Like I said, if you've got any questions that you want to ask, then please pop them in the comments and I will answer them as quickly as I can. Also, if you've got anything that you'd like me to talk about on the next session, I am going to be doing one more of these. And if there's anything particular that you think, well, she didn't talk about that, that would have been really, really useful, then please drop me a message in the comments and I will cover it next time. But for now, I'm going to say goodbye. I hope you have a lovely day. Bye-bye.